All right, everyone over by the front entrance, time to come sit down again. We're into the last bit. One more hour, and then there's drinks, okay? So come settle in. We'll get going here, I think. Okay, I'll do my introduction. That's not important, and everybody can kind of sit down as I do that. So I will welcome everyone back for this last little stretch here. My name is Jed Christianson. I'm with CropScience Canada, a part of the canola breeding team there, and I'm going to be the chair for this next session where we're going to get some research updates, a little bit of a discussion about public research, and then an end-of-day wrap-up panel. So the first three presentations that you're going to see are going to be 10 minutes long. We are going to try and wrap things up, so there'll be a tight 10 minutes, no questions. You can find the presenters afterwards if you need to follow up. The fourth presentation will be a little bit longer with a bit of space for Q&A on public research. And then at the end, Jay Whetter will come up and coordinate a panel with some takeaway thoughts from the end of the day. So for the first speaker today, for this last session, I'm going to invite up Amy Delaquis here, who is with the Manitoba Canola Growers Association, to give a canola research update from that group.
Hi everyone. As mentioned, my name is Amy Delaquis with Manitoba Canola Growers Association. So I'm the Research and Agronomy Manager with our group. So today I'll give a quick update on kind of where our program is, what we've been doing this past year, and then what we're looking forward to in 2025, or what we're working towards. So first, just making sure, giving credit to where the directors that sit on my research committee are, or who they are, as kind of helping drive some of the decisions that are being made for how we're spending our research and agronomy budget. So Nicola Dow is our current chair of this committee. We have Evan Gillis, Chuck Fossey, Jason Kaler, and Will Gerard that are also sitting on that committee. And then on staff, we have myself as well as Kendall Baker joined us, our research team in the fall. So first, just looking at our overall research priorities, these are our really general, stable kind of research priorities that encompass anything we could fund. So really things like increasing yield potential, stability, protecting canola from pests, nutrient use efficiency, reducing or improving environmental impacts of canola, and then some reduction of harvest and storage losses as well as end use. But then every year, our research committee reviews our current funding profile and looks at what we've been doing, as well as feedback from our membership during the year and some of the challenges that we've been facing, and really sets targets for things that we're wanting to focus on for the upcoming cycle of funding or some of our internal programming. So right now, we're looking or investing in flea beetles, verticillium, nutrient management, and then yield stability being the big ones. And then we're also looking at projects and things, looking at risks and opportunities for profitability in Manitoba, and then commercial hybrid evaluation as well. Where these fit within our program really depends on the level of the question. So we have our research and agronomy programs divided into four main buckets. The first one, and the largest one, by quite a bit, is our research project funding. So that's where we're funding projects primarily through public institutions, through the Agriscience cluster, or CARP, which is our Canola Agronomic Research Program. And then we also have projects that are led internally by myself, as well as a group of contractors that kind of fall under our applied research program. So that's our on-farm program, some of our variety trials, and our disease testing program as well. So any questions that fall kind of closer to the farm level typically will land in that applied research programs bucket. And then we also look at research at capacity and development. So are there investments that need to happen in terms of capacity for us to even be able to fund some and hit some of those targets? So that would be like chair positions at different universities and things. And then of course the last one being agronomic extension and services. So is it just a KTT service that needs to be focused on? So looking first, our research program funding. So this past year was a big year for MCGA, as well as I'm sure some of the other groups you'll hear next, for new projects hitting the ground. So because of the Agriscience clusters, the integrated crop agronomy cluster, as well as the canola cluster, we did have a huge amount of projects starting in 2024, which was really nice to see. And then we have our annual projects that we're funding through as well. So the CARP, we funded a project through ADF, and then our Manitoba specific program. When we look at how that shook out by research area or with our current funding, you can see that a large portion of our current project funding is focused on pest management. That's anything from breeding fruit resistance, as well as different control methods like cultural, chemical, things like that. Diseases being the large chunk of that historically has been focused on blackleg, clubroot, with a current or recent shift towards more verticillium projects coming in. And then insects being kind of the second largest bucket in that pest management, really focused on some flea beetle projects. We do have some leafhopper projects, and then we are focused on emerging threats like some pollen beetle projects as well in there. Two big buckets that have grew with projects starting this year have been the soil and water management, which historically we typically will stay a little bit smaller in that section. We have projects that started this year on controlled traffic farming, as well as some tile drainage work happening within Manitoba with the other Manitoba commodity groups as co-funding of those. Looking at our on-farm research program, so this is diving into our applied research. So this is what we are leading internally, and we are working directly with farmers on the farm, doing these, establishing trials for them, and then taking those results and using them to communicate to the rest of our members. So this program started in 2022 and has grown considerably since then. So in 2024, we had about 37 different trial locations in the province. We had trials focused on nitrogen rate, seeding rate, seed place fertilizer toxicity, phosphorus source, as well as a cover cropping for flea beetle management projects. So and looking forward into 2025, we will be planning on adding or offering the same trials to farmers. So farmers kind of dictate how many of each trial type gets put into the ground each year, depending on interest of farmers to participate. But we will in 2025, we have had a lot of requests for some verticillium management type projects. So we will be looking to include that in 2025 as well. And then as mentioned, this program is led internally, but we work with a huge amount of contractors across the province to try get a good geographic distribution of trials. So this is since 2022, when this program started. This is just a quick look at where those trials have been located. We do have kind of a gap in that southwest area, so that's really just kind of where our contractors are located. So we're hoping to fill some of that moving forward. Our variety trial program, so this program launched in 2024. After the CPT program, Canola Performance Trial program ended in 2022, our board did see value and had really strong feedback from our membership to continue independent variety testing trials in Manitoba. So 2024 was the first year that those trials were in the ground, with a really simple goal of just providing farmers access to independent third-party field testing data for commercial hybrids. So similar concept, but we did increase our plot size by quite a bit. So the plot size ranged from 40 to 60 square meters per plot in these trials compared to some of the more traditional small plot variety trials that have been done for other crops in Manitoba or canola in the past. So in 2024, we had 18 different hybrids that we were testing, and that was across 6 different seed companies. And we did get that data approved and published in kind of the end of October and out to the farmers. So this program has proven, even in its first year, from interest as the program launched during the season, as well as after these results went out, that this is our most highly sought out information from our members. So it's something that we are hoping to continue because we have a huge amount of demand from the membership for this program. And then hoping in 2025 we can get a couple more seed companies comfortable with the protocol so that we can include a better picture of the market for canola varieties. This is just quickly our pest testing program. So in Manitoba, as part of our applied research program, we do offer free testing to farmers for clubroot, blackleg verticillium, as well as amaranth ID. And you can see clubroot's been relatively stable across the last 3 years. around 50 samples being submitted a year. But for blackleg and verticillium, we did have over 200% sample submissions this year, so in 2024, compared to what we've had in 22 and 23. Really just highlighting the challenges that farmers were facing this year in Manitoba, as well as the concern with some of the amaranth species moving into the province. That's what's come out of that program this year. And then our last was just something that comes out of our canola capacity and development section of our budget, is that we ran our third year of our canola research camp. So our canola research camp is really a program where we invite a small group of researchers out for 2 days in the province and take them out and help them build their network with Manitoba farmers. It's been a really great program for us to build that network between researchers and farmers, as well as kind of an interdisciplinary network of researchers that then we're seeing proposals being brought forward to us that are really just more valuable and have a better, well-rounded proposals coming through. So in 2024, we took out 12 researchers. They were from 5 different institutions, and they really included 8 different disciplines. So that's, we plan to run that for at least another 2 years. We're hoping to run it on kind of a 5-year cycle. With that, I'll leave it. Again, I'm here all week if anyone has any questions, or my contact information's up there.
Thank you, Amy. Next up, we'll have a presentation from Brittany Visscher with Alberta canola producers. Brittany isn't here today, so we have a recorded presentation that will be queued up right away.
Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Visscher and I'm the Research Director here at Alberta Canola. Apologies, I can't be there with you in person. I am just over 35 weeks pregnant and have been advised not to travel. However, I do want to take this opportunity to introduce to you Autumn Barnes. You may be familiar with that name. Previously, she's with the Canola Council of Canada and more recently Lethbridge College. If you haven't, she's here today, so please, if you haven't met her, introduce yourself, and then also, if you know her, we're happy to have her back in the canola industry, so please welcome her back, because very excited to have her. Today I'm just going to give you a brief overview on our annual research funding process and updates regarding this past year's funding targets, and then hopefully keep it under 10 minutes. So to start, I just wanted to say our research committee is comprised of 6 board members. 2 of them are here today, Alan Hampton, who's the chair of the research committee, as well as Cheryl Westman. Our research priorities, if you've been to Canola Week before, you've seen these. They haven't changed. They're a really good way to guide the research proposals and just say we need these proposals to fit under one of these 3 priorities. And sometimes proposals can fit under more than one, if not all 3. However, our research department has grown and changed substantially over time. We used to focus more on the agronomy of canola. As we know, canola is a newer crop. However, research is changing and we're looking at more of the genetics now. Heavily focus on genetics as compared to previous. We wanted to more clearly define these though for research submitting proposals. So new for 2024, we have funding targets. And these were created by the Research Symposium, which I will get to in a little bit, but they will get updated at least yearly or reviewed yearly and updated as need be. Just wanted to mention that these are on our website and they're not ranked from most important to least important because they're all important. However, number 1, the majority of the respondents prioritized improving yield stability and environmental extremes as number 1. So that's how 1 to 8 is ranked, followed by diseases, weed management, flea beetles, nitrogen, etc. So when we talk about the Research Symposium and how we built these research priorities and funding targets, as you can see these white boxes, all the growers that attended were given symposium bucks, which are fake dollars. And growers are able to listen to researchers and looking at these researchers and their current research, their team, what they're working on, but also what keeps them up at night and potential threats to agriculture. And then the growers got to interact on Slido and ask them, and in person, all the questions they wanted to. And then they got to allocate their fake dollars to these white boxes to say where their priorities are for research needs. So the first one we had was in Lethbridge. As you can see, and this is a percentage based off of the total dollars and where the dollars were spent. So abiotic stresses, disease, weeds, and irrigation and water management were the top 4 at Lethbridge. However, in Grand Prairie, we had abiotic stresses, diseases, fertility and nutrient management, and insects. So we had 2 that were the same and then 2 that were different. So unfortunately, we only have 2 data sets to go off of at the moment. However, you need to start somewhere, and this has been a really great starting point for us to understand what the grower needs are and to understand that they're diverse across the province, going from southern Alberta to northern Alberta. Now we'll, in January, go to central Alberta in Red Deer and hopefully gather a lot of grower feedback at that research symposium. My hope is to also have a few mini symposiums so that we can access more growers' response and just update them more regularly to make sure that we're getting the most accurate representation of growers across Alberta. I also want to say here, when we compare the 2 vertical lines, the lines from the 2 research symposiums, it's also looking at 90% of the current annual intake of research proposals focus on those top 4 research priorities. So the results we get back from these grower interaction events and experiences and engagements, it really influences the proposals that we bring in to full proposal. Here are the overlapping priorities. So for 2025, we just had a research meeting with the committee, but I wanted to highlight how many projects we brought forward to full proposal. So there was a total of 30 through 3 different funding streams. The total project costs were just over $14.5 million, and the funding request was just under $10 million. So looking at that math, each project is just under $1 million, $500,000 each, and our budget at Alberta Canola is $1 million. And so it has increased in the last couple of years from $700,000. However, as you can see, $1 million is a lot, but not a lot for research. The project costs have changed over time. So we really value the opportunity to collaborate and co-fund with other groups to extend the reach of grower dollars, and so that we can really diversify our research portfolio. So Alberta Canola participates in 2 main funding streams: the Canola Agronomic Research Program, which is administered by the Canola Council, and Alberta Canola is a part of it with Manitoba Canola Growers and SaskOilseeds. And then the Agriculture Funding Consortium, it's Alberta-based but not exclusive to Alberta, so there's 16 different grower groups a part of it, and it allows us to fund in multi-crop or group research projects, which has been great. So as you can see, there's Alberta Grains, Alberta Innovates, Alberta Pulses, just to name a few. There's also Manitoba Cropping Alliance and Prairie Oak Growers Association, Sask Barley, Sask Wheat. The AFC is comprised of, like I said, 16, so there's a plethora of different groups involved. When we look at selecting projects for funding, I just wanted to highlight that we do have a fairly extensive review process for our proposals. We have a research committee, which is of the 6 farmer directors. We have our external reviewers, who are scientists with expertise and knowledge in agronomic and canola research, especially in Western Canada. And then we have the Canola Council of Canada agronomy specialists who weigh in with their specialized background. However, full proposals are solely voted on by the research committee because this is grower dollars. We need this research to be directed by growers. So, because we just had our 2025 meeting And many of you know, as researchers, we have not yet decided on the full proposals yet. Just internal at Alberta Canola, we've had some discussions, but I wanted to focus on the 2023 and 2024 projects, heavily focusing on insects and diseases. Of the 9 projects, 4 were in insects and 5 were in diseases. Looking at insects, we had 1 with midges, so population dynamics and monitoring, and then 3 flea beetles, which included movement tracking, volatile base trapping, and management through pheromones and yeast. For diseases, clubroot, again, is heavily supported with 3 projects: inoculum isolation, in vitro culture, and pathotype evaluation and monitoring, and then 2 verticillium stripe projects, looking at the favorable conditions of verticillium stripe and its synergistic interaction with L. maculans. Lastly, I wanted to add in where can all this information be accessible by growers? Which ultimately we want this information to get back into growers so it can be relatable to them on their farm operations and ultimately benefit them. I've mentioned this before. We have a website. It's more updated now as we have our new our new website up and running. But you can go check it out, whether you're an industry member as you're a grower, part of a life science company, or a researcher. This has been made so that anyone can go on and understand the research that Alberta Canola is funding. So as you can see, there's impact of synergistic interactions between V. longisporium and L. maculans on canola yield. Clicking on the read more, we can bring up this beautiful pie chart, which shows a visual as to how much Alberta Canola is funding versus the overall project cost. Some project details like lead researcher, co-researcher, funding partners, the duration of the project, and if it's ongoing or completed. Now, if you're a researcher, I want you to ignore how simplistic this next portion is, because like I said, we want this. We don't want to duplicate any work. Growers or anyone in the industry can go on the Canola Research Hub and access information on the more scientific background to these papers, but we want anyone to be able to understand where the dollars are going for the research projects at Alberta Canola. So we've listed the challenge as to why we thought this project was important to fund, what the project is about, the results if the project is complete, and then how this research benefits growers. So go check that out. It's new, open to feedback, open to constructive criticism, and Autumn would love to take all of that constructive criticism from you. But with that, that is the research update from Alberta Canola. Just wanted to say I'm here till 2025, and Autumn has started, but she will be here for the entirety of 2025. So please include us both until 2025, and then take my name off because I will not be responding until 2026. So with that, I hope you guys have a great time at Canola Weekend. I'm bummed I can't be there with you guys, so take care. Thank you.
That was great. Now we'll round out the research updates with a presentation from Doug Heath. Doug is the research manager at the Saskatchewan Oilseeds Development Commission, and he'll be talking about their research updates.
All right, thanks a lot. I'm Doug Heath, the research manager at SaskOilseeds. So earlier this year, SaskCanola amalgamated with SaskFlax. So stay tuned to our brand launch in the middle of January at our AGM as SaskOilseeds. So we work on behalf of canola and flax farmers to fund crop research, policy development, and market development. And I invite you to check out all of our current research projects that we're funding at various different places. So on the Canola Council's Canola Digest Science Edition is a great place, as well as Canola Watch and Canola Research Hub, as well as the SaskCanola website for the research pages. Okay, I just wanted to talk about a couple of applied programs that we're doing. The first is our free disease testing program for farmers. And from this morning's talks, it's clear that there's a lot of blackleg issues this year. And so using the same resistance R-rated variety in the same field might not protect against shifting blackleg populations. So we feel it's important to rotate canola varieties with different R gene packages to keep ahead of the shifting populations in your fields. And a blackleg race test might not fully guarantee that a different variety with a different R gene package will protect against all the races in your field, but it can help you notify which varieties might be a bad choice to put in your field, depending on the races of blackleg that are present. As well, with the disease testing, we found that blackleg and verticillium are often hard to tell the difference, and so having a genetic test will give you a definitive diagnosis, and then you can manage for the correct disease or diseases that are present. And with Clubroot, a diagnostic PCR test on the soil will help you identify the presence of resting spores at the earliest stages, so you can catch it and manage it before the spore load builds up after several rounds of canola in that field. And then that just makes it much more difficult to manage. Okay, so our disease testing program is currently looking at 3 diseases. And for blackleg and verticillium, we've been requesting approximately 10-inch long canola stem pieces, including the crown, to be submitted for separate testing of blackleg and verticillium. And so there'd be pooled stem samples get submitted. So the results on the next slide would be from a pooled sample, not necessarily, we wouldn't know for sure whether both diseases are being found on the same stem or not from the current testing. So for this year, so far, we've gotten 133 diagnostic results back from our partner, Discovery Seed Labs. So out of that 133, 112 had L. maculans only, 8 had L. biglobosa only, and 13 had neither one of those. And of the 133, 18 also had verticillium longisporum. And so within that 18, 14 had L. maculans, and 2 had biglobosa, and 2 didn't have either. And yeah, so those numbers don't all add up, but that's because there are other diseases present in some of the samples, like fusarium. And we don't have the results back yet from the Clubroot soil testing, but we've sent out 34, so slightly fewer than in Manitoba. And so Clubroot was removed from the Pest Act in Saskatchewan this year as well, but we still think it's very important to be scouting and testing for it, because it's easiest to manage it the sooner that you can detect it. And the earliest that you can detect it is with a soil test. So in conjunction with that disease testing program, we also worked with partners, including 3 agri-ARM sites, the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture, Canola Council of Canada, to host disease field training days for agronomists. And that was in August and September this year, in Outlook, Melfort, and Yorkton. And these were part of a sclerotinia fungicide project, but with an extra rep added just for these training days specifically. So this just gave a quick 2-hour field day for experts and agronomists to briefly talk about each of the 4 main canola diseases, and left time for practicing and working with our partners to communicate with agronomists of how the best way to submit samples. And so we'll be doing that again in 2025 with dates and locations to be determined. Okay, and the second thing I wanted to talk to you today about was with our on-farm, top-notch research trials. So this program we launched in 2023 with 9 sites across the province, and we've since expanded to 25 sites and 4 protocols this year. So the program aims to help producers answer questions that they have that are specific to their farm. So producers are able to try a practice or a product on their own farm using their own equipment and existing practices. And so the cooperators can work with their own agronomists if they want to, and they'll have access to a research specialist. And so the important part of these trials is that they're randomized and replicated in your field to help account for field variability and to take some of the anecdotal evidence that might come out if you're just looking at a single strip. And as well, we're partnering with some of the other crop commissions in Saskatchewan as well in cases of protocols that might be common to more than one crop. So in 2023, we started looking at nitrogen-fixing biologicals. This year, we expanded to 4 protocols, so nitrogen-fixing biologicals, seeding rates, enhanced efficiency fertilizers, and split nitrogen applications. And we've been working with Kayla Slind this year at work to help manage the trials and coordinate with agronomists. And she'll be giving a lot more in-depth talk about the on-farm trials tomorrow. And so the results of this year's trials will be publicly available later in February after the cooperators of the trials are given the first access to the information. And we'll be having a wrap-up meeting in January for this program. So it's very much a team effort to carry on these on-farm trials. So anyone that's thinking about participating should feel comfortable knowing that they'll be well supported. And so the applications are open right now for the 2025 program. And we'll be offering 6 protocols, including seeding rates, enhanced efficiency fertilizers, split nitrogen, fungicide, boron, and other micronutrients, and early seeding dates. And so our end goal is to eventually have a tool that will allow any grower to conduct replicated research on their farm with their own equipment and to be able to draw statistically sound conclusions. And so, so just check out our website, saskcanola.com for now, and for how you can participate in the on-farm trials or the disease testing programs or are currently funded and past research as well. So thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, Doug. And now we'll have a presentation from Dave Charne. Dave Charne has graduated to becoming a consultant, breeding consultant with Corteva, and he will be giving a talk on enhancing the public contribution to canola research. Following this presentation, there will be a little bit of time for Q&A, so use the Slido or think up some questions to ask, and I'll turn over the stage.
I always have to start by figuring out how to use the remote. So I see a forward and I see a back that's in red, so I should be careful. First I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to give this small presentation. I see so many new faces here. I haven't attended this event I was trying to remember when I last was here, but it's several years. And it's great to see the new faces because it means the canola industry is very vibrant and it's growing. and that's a good thing. So I was asked to talk about, I was actually asked to talk about what could the public sector do, public sector research do, that would better meet the industry needs. And I thought about that in two pieces, the what and the how. And the what piece, I think we have so much expertise available. We could make lists of things, and it's relatively straightforward to get to a list. And then, of course, getting to the priorities is always a different process. But the how, to me, was the interesting piece. So in this talk, I'm focusing more on the how than on the what, although I do touch on the what. A little bit about me. I was just realizing that the first time I was involved with canola was in 1984. And so I've got exactly 40 years in the industry in one form or another. That was as a graduate student. And I was hired by a small company before I finished my graduate work as a canola breeder. I was breeding Polish canola, Brassica rapa, and that certainly dates me. From there, I moved to Brassica napus. I worked on winter canola for Europe, and most of my career I was with Pioneer Hybrid, and I spent about 20 years as Pioneer's global research breeding leader for canola. And that was a fantastic experience. And during that time, Pioneer was acquired by DuPont. DuPont merged with Dow, and that gave rise to Corteva. And I retired from Corteva in 2020, but I still work part-time for Corteva. I'm just a temp, basically managing some external collaborations. So with that background, oh, there it is. Okay, so when I think about our industry, I try to think holistically, and this simple graphic shows the canola value chain. And I think everyone in the room should be able to place themselves in one of these boxes. But basically, the action is really, from my perspective, my history and research, the action is in the upstream part of the value chain here. And so if we think about the R&D, while there's some R&D occurring, across all these boxes, the concentrated R&D is upstream here in what I've just called the input providers box. And you can see a short list of some of the key activities and the organizations that are involved in that. And the other point I want to make, and this is some of the factual information that I think is very important, the Canola Council every 4 to 5 years gets an update done by this group, Global Data PLC, on the total economic impact of canola on the Canadian economy. And I think it's remarkable. In 2013, that was between 19 and $20 billion, which I thought was huge at the time. And today, a decade later, it's over 43 billion. So it's more than doubled in that time frame. And if we think about all the ups and downs and the challenges we've had over that time, in spite of that, the value of and the impact of our industry has grown substantially. So there's a lot at stake here. And then I got thinking about canola research, and because I spent so many years, you could say, administering canola research, I think about budgets, because there's never enough money, there's always too many things to do. And I said, well, what is the total investment in research in that upstream box? And not surprisingly, there's no single source of a number for that. I didn't take the time to go around and try to come up with a number, but I did consult a few people, and this is a swag, but maybe it's somewhere between $150 and $200 million. So that seems like a lot of money, but relative to the value of the industry, that's actually maybe not that large compared to some other sectors of the economy. The biggest portion of this is invested in seed and traits, and that includes the public and the private sectors. And so to put a number on that, again, it's a swag, somewhere around 120 to 140 million. And the bulk of that is in the private sector. And of course, this is all in, it's including plant breeding, genomics, trait development, et cetera, et cetera. But now, I just want to point out that that's what I would call the core funding. So that's the money that's dedicated, and a big chunk of that, it's fixed costs. I think everybody who administers budgets knows what I mean by that. Those are the costs for the people, the infrastructure, the equipment, the things that really represent, the long-term investment in research programming. And then you have a much smaller amount of money that you have a little more flexibility with, although certainly in the private sector, a lot of that is committed to things like running the breeding machine, scale, et cetera. And on the public side, I think, while the things are focused on might be different, I think the budgetary structure is pretty similar. But then we've got this third bucket of money, if we think about it that way, and I call that project funding. So, the three, research leaders from the provincial grower organizations who just presented, they told us about some of the things they're funding with checkoff dollars, et cetera. And we know there's a whole bunch of different sources of money here, a lot of money coming from federal and provincial sources that could vary over time, of course. But this is a significant amount of money, and the key point here is that's available to fund new research or expanded research in existing important areas. And organizationally, or we could say procedurally, most of the money is going to proposals coming from public sector researchers. And they can have private sector involvement, but most of this is funding public sector research. And of course, that's great because the public sector researchers have a much smaller dollar base to work with. And this is probably where we expect more of the discovery research, that kind of thing, to be happening, basic research. But this is the paradigm. And so I have no idea what the total is there. Sally Vale connected me with a few people, and we didn't get to a conclusion, although I think that's a work in progress. And of course, a big chunk of that money at any point in time is committed to existing project work. But there's always some funds coming available, and they do fund new projects annually. So now, a couple of thoughts on public versus private. Private, which has that bigger core investment, a lot of that money is dedicated to running, the breeding machine, delivering products to farmers, and of course, all of the products, et cetera, that are going to make it, and products, traits, and the technologies, that the farmer needs to support them are going to come from the private sector. And so if we think about a trait, that's a simple example, to get to market, it has to go through the private breeding organizations. And that's just the way the industry is structured. Public, on the other hand, we've got a lot of different organizations here, and their overall goal is to execute R&D that ultimately will benefit canola growers and downstream stakeholders. But it's really critical. They have ready access to this project funding. And so there's a history of agronomic research, some consortium projects, et cetera, and that kind of brings me down to this next section, which is really where I want to focus, public-private collaborations. So, for me, this is an area of opportunity, and we've got a lot of history, especially of consortium projects led by AAFC and some smaller projects with universities, some with NRC. And I think there's a lot of insight and learnings from that history. But generally, I would say these projects are organized and kind of put together by public sector researchers. Private companies are asked to put some money in because, of course, they're able to match or multiply that money from some of the sources that I mentioned earlier and that you're all aware of. But then the execution is usually led by the public sector too. The private sector may be putting some in-kind in, et cetera, in addition to the cash, okay? And any IP that comes out is either publicly held or it's joint. Depending on the project and the deliverables, there may be a royalty involved. But again, I'd emphasize that in the end, if we use the example of a trait, anything coming out of these collaborations, in order to get it on farm and to really positively impact the industry financially, it needs to go through the private sector and be incorporated into elite germplasm and delivered as seed. Meeting industry needs. The second part, future needs, those are obviously current as well. But the first statement, I've already pretty much covered that. We can just say that the private sector, it's in canola, it's very alive, vibrant, healthy, and competitive. It's like I think compared to some industries, the canola industry is wonderful because we're small enough to get everybody in a room. But we're always growing and we always have a lot of new things going on. When we come down to this future needs, I consulted some stakeholders, and I won't pretend that it's comprehensive, but I was happy to see many of these things showing up on the provincial presentations. So this is the feedback I got on some things that are critical, urgent, et cetera, verticillium, blackleg, earlier maturity, stress, or abiotic stress. I mean, it goes under many names, resiliency, insect tolerance, nutrient use efficiency. You probably would have gotten several of these 5 years ago or maybe even 10 years ago, but they've just become much more urgent. And the last three on the list there, those are likely quite complex, and if we think about a lot of the things that have been undertaken, they're generally things that are more discrete, where there's a clear deliverable, and the process of getting from an input to a deliverable is more straightforward. These are getting really complex. So, now I'm getting to the final piece. Could something here be an opportunity for a different kind of public-private collaborative project? And I'm calling it an industry project. Okay, so something that's critical to the industry. You kind of get alignment, you'll never get 100% consensus, but you get majority consensus on that. And then you figure out how to proceed. And so how can we tackle this opportunity? Because I do see it as an opportunity. My cup is always half full. And my goal here is just to open a door to maybe think about this. So the first thing is always communication. And so we have this forum, 3 days, but if we look, the agenda is largely dedicated to delivering information. And that's critical, that's important, but I think we need another kind of session where we can bring together a smaller group of people to really talk about the priorities and ultimately try to define the things that could be done truly collaboratively and jointly by the public and private sector. And so I'd say start with one strategic target. And then you get into defining how you're going to tackle this, okay? So make it truly collaborative, which means there's ownership by both the public and the private participants, and the execution is fully integrated. because historically I think it's been left more to the public sector to lead these projects, these collaborations. We need to think about a different resourcing model, because I know from the private sector side we would say, well, we're asked to pay 3 times. We're asked to put in cash up front, and we understand that because it can be multiplied from the project funding sources. But then we're asked also to potentially pay a royalty, and maybe there's some in-kind in the execution, but certainly the royalty piece, anytime that's involved, that's a major burden. And then thirdly, we ultimately have to put it into our elite germplasm and deliver it to the marketplace. And again, a trade is a good example here. So how can we change that? How can we use the project funding that the public sector has access to, define a project, and basically use that as the variable money that we need, and let both the public and private participants give more in-kind in the execution piece, but really define the execution plan so that it's a truly collaborative plan. Okay? And then in the end, of course, the private sector still has to take whatever the deliverable is and put it into products and deliver it to farmers. So, that's basically what I wanted to share today. And I don't know if it resonates with people. It's fairly simple. I didn't give a lot of technical detail. But basically, if there's a few people in the room that think it has merit and are willing to pick this up and try to make something with it, I think that's great. Otherwise, I got 20 minutes. In fact, I may have gone over because this red light's been flashing for a while. But if it does, then let's make some hay out of this. And I'm going to stop there, and thank you for the opportunity to participate, for the invitation, and I don't know if there's any time for questions.
So thank you again. It was very good. We are running a bit behind, but I'd say let's see if there are any questions in the room, or I don't know if there's anything online, but we'll take 1 or 2 questions in the room if there are some. There's a mic stand up there. There's an empty mic stand over there, but we can find a mic, I'm sure. There's one on the table here.
Or comments from those people who feel very strongly, whatever the perspective is on this topic. Well, if not, then that's great. We'll have lots of time to network during the reception. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, so take advantage of the networking time, and if you are interested in what Dave was proposing there, then go talk to him. So to round out the day, I'm going to invite Jay Whetter up here to convene a short panel with some kind of grower reactions to the day, and then I'll come back briefly just for some wrap-up housekeeping things before we shuffle on.
Thanks. Thanks, Jed. Can people hear me? So, Roger, can I get number 1 up there, please? Chuck, Alan, and Heath. So I've got 3 farmer directors with Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta canola organizations. Do you guys want to sit, or do you want to stand? We've been sitting all day. I feel like, let's just gather right here. Yeah, and we'll face the audience, unless you like talking with your back to people. Yeah, that's right. Okay, 3 quick questions. This is going to be quick snappers. Alan, we'll start with you. Alan, what was the most interesting thing you heard today?
Well, I'll be darned. I wrote a few things down, but...
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, I think I'm done. No, I think probably the most interesting would have revolved around the whole biofuel and the fact that the industry can thrive, but there's no certainty. So that, to me, is sort of interesting. So you're always looking at value adding, stuff like that, but.
No certainty in terms of it relies on policy to survive?
Exactly. No, I think policy and probably from a farming perspective, we're probably going to have to produce a whole bunch more seed stock. So I think there could be limitations. So anyway, something that's positive may not, we have a couple of things to get done to ensure that it is a potential future industry.
That was Alan. Alan's from Alberta. Chuck from Manitoba.
Yeah, I guess from a personal viewpoint, the one that really struck me was the understanding the impact of forest fires on agriculture. I really noticed the impact of smoke on my canola crops back in 2023 and in other years when we've had major forest fires and we see that smoke up in the air, and you're really kind of wondering how's that going to impact our crops and just environment in general and what's happening there. So I really found that on a personal level very interesting.
Right on. Thanks, Chuck. Keith from Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I'm going to go a couple ways in this one. At the start, we had the presentation from Ukraine, and I definitely found that one interesting, as we need to understand our competitors, but we also think that we've got some really big challenges. And when you look at the political challenges, that the Ukrainian farmers are going through, ours are not really that big. So sort of really put that into perspective. The other one is where Alan was with the biofuel carbon sustainability session. I found it interesting because, it's relatively new for us. It's a fluid situation, and not just because it's oil or diesel fuel, but it is moving, and there are challenges with it, but there's a tremendous amount of opportunity comes with it, and so that's I really found that interesting.
Okay, keep that mic, Keith. All right, we're going to work backwards for question 2, and there's only 2 questions. Keith, what do you want researchers to dig into more after what you heard today? And I'm wondering if Dave Charne inspired you. Is there something that could become a public-private partnership? That's a lot of P's to talk into a mic.
The public-private partnership, we've discussed that around a research table a few times, and yeah, there's some great opportunities with that, and it's it comes a challenge. So Dave had talked about what you do with the IPs, and I guess as a farmer, when we're putting in our checkoff dollars, that's a big concern of what happens to those IPs. So if a private company is putting in some of the dollars, but they want all the IPs, that's pretty tough to go back to the farmers that we're collecting the levies from and explaining that to them. But if the IPs are handled right and they become public, well, it does open up some really good opportunities, and the collaboration is definitely best for everyone. Back to the second part with the research, I found that the root engineering, it has great potential, and like Dave had pointed out just in the session before, it's one of those ones that's long-term, it's complex, but it does provide some great opportunities into the future, hopefully, and it's something that I feel that would be a good investment for the farmer dollars. My curious farmer mind also goes to what else do we need to go along with that? Because these bigger roots, they also have to go deeper into the soil, and so do we need more soil research to go with that? That could be a discussion for the future, whether it's compaction, biologicals to work with it. But the one that really hit home was when Agriscience put up the blackleg graphs there, and seeing that we thought we had blackleg conquered here quite a few years ago. Now we're stepping back. And I'm seeing that on my own farm too, to where the blackleg resistance isn't as sharp as what it used to be. And so to to me, that's just an area that we need to understand better and have some more research in.
Thanks, Keith. Chuck?
Yeah, I think the area I saw that was most interesting was the biofuels and carbon sustainability session, and really the part about developing larger root biomass and increasing depth, root size. I think that has a lot of potential, both for farmers and allowing us to sequester more carbon and maybe reach down to get more nutrients from deeper down the soil, or being able to make better use of soil moisture, especially in dry years. But the other side of it is I think there's a lot of benefits to society if we can increase that sequestration of carbon into the soil and storing it for long periods of time. I think that would be a really good thing to do, and maybe that's one of those things where there's a benefit both to producers and to the public, where that kind of 3P research funding could really work in there somehow. So.
And my turn. Well, you guys covered it all. But no, I picked up a couple of things, and one was early on. It was like, how do we optimize canola to meet demand? And one big thing is just the amount of oil that we're extracting from canola. So I think research probably needs to be shifted or focused on oil production. And the second thing is near and dear to my heart, but Richardson ground squirrel, so gopher control. And it is becoming a bit of a problem out there. So I don't know if it lines up exactly with some of the mandates that our researchers may have, but that's an evolving problem as well.
Gophers are near and dear to your heart, or getting rid of them is near and dear to your heart?
Well, I think getting rid of them, but we need more museums like they have over at Torrington.
Are you going to give a little plug for all those little stuffed gophers in various...
Well, of course, it's not that far from home, but anyhow, no, they're a pest, and in my travels this past summer, I did see fields. Like, I'm sort of on the dark brown, thin black, transitional type soils, so as you get a little bit south of me, there's a little bit more prairie, and the prairie dogs are... They're reclaiming what they've been doing for thousands of years.
Okay, well, whoever's having supper with you tonight will enjoy talking about gophers.
Oh, exactly.
So we got two on roots and one on oil and a little bit on gophers. So for people who want to think about what research they're doing and the impact on farmers, roots and oil. There you go. Thanks, guys.
That was great. Good, so we'll just wrap things up here. First off, it's the end of the first day. I'd like to invite you all to join me in thanking again all of our speakers today. We had some excellent presentations. Good. Thank you to Petro for joining us all the way from Ukraine. That's tremendous. And I want to say on behalf of the organizing committee, thank you all for attending as well. This has been a very good turnout, and we're glad to see everyone here. We want to also say that we're pleased again to support the Keith Downey Undergraduate Scholarship at the University of Saskatchewan with a donation in lieu of speaker gifts for today. Those of our virtual attendees that are collecting CCA credits, watch the screen. Apparently the screen is going to put up some codes that will allow you to claim your credits. Those in the room can sign in at the registration table and claim credits that way. And that brings us to the end. So the two housekeeping things are, first off, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., breakfast starts for the Discovery Day. So the talks kick off at 9, but breakfast will be served at 8. It's a great opportunity to network while you're still bright. And then the last thing, for those who have registered to attend the welcome reception, it will be right next door here, sponsored by Bayer. So you can head over now and start to do some of that mixing and mingling, and ask Dave about partnerships and so on. So with that, thank you all, and we'll adjourn for the day.